thanking God this time, not just for patience, but the wisdom to wait. Let's call this chapter, I Will Rejoice, understanding that Habakkuk is now going to say that he will quietly wait, as he will then go on to say he will rejoice, even if times are sparse, as he waits for the salvation of the Lord. Verse 1, reading, however, a prayer of Habakkuk the prophet according to Shigionoth. I'm mispronouncing that, but it goes on in verse 2 to say, O Lord, I have heard the report of you and your works, O Lord, do I fear. In the midst of the years, revive it. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy, which is going to be super important because, as we have already seen Amos say, the day of the Lord is something to be feared even by his own people because God is fair. He is not cutting out a pass just because we call ourselves his people. He is judging everyone according to objective standards of right and wrong. And with that, Habakkuk seems to have a wisdom or maybe even a cautious optimism in his relief. As verse 3 will go on to talk about where God is coming from in his presence. Verses 4 through 7 going on to talk about the brightness or the majesty of his presence and also the effects that it has on his environment. What goes before him and what comes behind him is going to be a kind of awe-inspiring destruction just by his mere, as we said, appearance. But beyond that, it's going to seem to talk about the collateral damage that his appearance in judgment can cause, that being in verses 8 and 9, talking about really questioning, was your anger against the rivers and the sea? Understanding that this is not the first time that God allows us to do things that sometimes have negative effects on others and not just other people, but the environment in which we live. He is going to go on, though, to talk about the way in which even his judgments or his destruction come with the purpose of restoration. The end of verse 8 saying that he rode on his horses, on his chariot of salvation, understanding that the destruction is the byproduct of his attempt to save someone who is in need of some help. Going on, though, he's going to pick up that theme again in, in verse 13, where he says, you went out for the salvation of your people, for the salvation of your anointed. You crushed the head of the house of the wicked, laying him bare from thigh to neck. Verses 14 through 16, going on to further describe the destruction of the wicked that introduces the salvation of those suffering under them. Verse 14 will read, you pierced with his own arrows the heads of his warriors, who came like a whirlwind to scatter me, rejoicing as if to devour the poor in secret. The salvation of the Lord, provoking the relief in Habakkuk in verse 16, where it says, I hear and my body trembles. My lips quiver at the sound. Rottenness enters into my bones. My legs tremble beneath me. That doesn't sound like relief, but he's going to go on to say, yet I will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon the people who invade us. Now realizing he is going to have to wait, the entire book of Habakkuk ends with the famous saying in verse 17, though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food. The flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God, the Lord, is my strength. He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on my high places. Concluding by simply saying in almost a context line, to the choir master with stringed instruments, this song, I'm guessing, is not only going to encourage Habakkuk, but many more who learn to wait on the Lord in days of difficulty. Habakkuk providing us yet another example of a prophet whose words seem to point forward to the revelation, understanding that Habakkuk dealt with the invasion of the Chaldeans, otherwise known as the Babylonians, another power that, at least symbolically, will represent at least one of the powers from whom God will deliver his people in the end, as the revelation may likewise remind us of the way in which God bullies, even if his salvation requires his people to pass through a great tribulation.